Good morning, everyone. Magic, happiness magic, is here in Houston today with the legend, Vijay Amritraj. ABC of tennis. I know my school days been fascinated to watch the tennis of Vijay. And that was the ABC of tennis. Amritraj, ball and corners. And after that, he had a big journey, Britannia Tennis Academy. His contributions to the sports, tennis, from badminton to tennis journey to Hollywood. We are going to hear from Vijay. And Vijay kindly consented to be with the Happiness Magic. And he's going to tell about the history of tennis. He's going to talk about his influencing person, his mom, Maggie, and the journey of excellence. Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you.
With me, really appreciate for your valuable time. And I was, even I get goosebumps in thinking and watching and visualizing the way you are playing the tennis. I think you may be the best physique of tennis at that time, and you beat John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors, you name it. And I don't think anybody came to that stature in Indian tennis. So what happened to your tennis, Vijay?
Well, I was very fortunate. I started playing tennis mainly because of health. I wasn't very well as a child growing up, and it had to do with my lungs and so on. And I, always give entire credit to my parents, especially my mother, who paid so much attention in trying to make me like everyone else. And I had to work so much harder, both at school and in my physical capability. And so we she ended up spending a lot of time in hospital with me, and eventually putting me into this sport because the doctor suggested it, and then one thing led to the other, and she just stayed focused on me with my school, my tennis, and all of it. And eventually it took a turn that we never anticipated, where I ended up then at a young age traveling overseas, and then eventually winning the national championships and the Asian championships, and then being in the top 10 in the world.
Top 10 in the world, and Davis Cup. I think you are the only player played for India in the Davis Cup finals. Am I right?
Twice actually, in 74 and 87, both.
But 74, my understanding that India doesn't want to play.
We defaulted to South Africa in 1974 because of their apartheid policies at the time. And it took me another 13 years of leading India through ups and downs to eventually get to the final again in 1987. So it was a special time, a special moment for Indian tennis. Tennis went open in 1968. And since then, we've only been in the final twice. Once in 74 and once in 87. So for me, it was a real privilege and an honor to have played for so long, nearly 20 years on the Davis Cup team.
Yes.
Both as number one player and as playing captain of the team, and then eventually, carrying the torch at the 1988 Seoul Olympics in Korea. And so there were lots of special moments that I lived through in the 70s and 80s.
I mean, you can tell about the history of tennis, really speaking, because you had the opportunity and you made that happen. After that, the tennis in India didn't grow. I mean, it really, when you look at it, there is no single tennis champion. I know you started the first tennis academy in Chennai, Britannia Tennis Academy, and your mom was managing it, right? How come they didn't have a sustainable journey on that?
Well, we could only do it as long as she could run it. And so we had it for about 16 years, 17 years. And it was a terrific program, but it was designed, it was a non-profit program, so it was, it was basically looking after the children at a young age and making sure that they were coached in the right way, physical attributes, dietary requirements, religious requirements, homework, schooling, books, all of it, travel, all of it was taken care of by our academy. And so we were able to produce several Davis Cup players for
That's right.
India.
I think Leander Paes
Leander
came
came
through.
out of it, Rohit Rajpal, Gaurav Natekar, Asif Ismail. We had a lot of very good players come out of the country because of that program. And playing professional tennis or playing tennis at a high level is a very high risk venture, more risky than anything else you could possibly do, including any startup you could start up in business. And so, because fortunately or unfortunately, there are no guarantees in sport, and especially in an individual sport where it's based entirely on merit.
Wow. So the single, nobody, came in the single tennis world of India. What may be attributed, because as I mentioned in the past, your physique was very unique at that time. Your durability, you were the best serve and volley player in the grass as well as in the fast track too. And many people followed you, many people followed your footsteps, but they couldn't even come close to you. You made the history kind of died there. What may be the advice for you, for the young tennis players coming to this world?
Well, I think the important aspect here is to have a kind of discipline and someone who can actually inspire and motivate you all through your work ethic. In my case, it was my mother, my tennis coach at the time, Mr. T.A. Ramarao.
She was the biggest influencer in your life.
Certainly she was, no question about it. Mr. T.A. Ramarao was my coach who taught me to play the game.
What about Pancho?
And he came later. Gonzalez came much later.
Okay.
But in my early years, it was him who gave me the basics, gave me the, he had diabetes, and he basically said to me, "I'll make you India's #1 before I die," and he did. And so I think from after that, the question became as to how much better could I get?
That's right.
And you had to go overseas for that. And then, of course, I was very fortunate to have Pancho play with me and eventually coach me for about 3 years. And that took me to a different level altogether to compete with the balls in the corners and the McEnroes and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And so I ended up playing on the world tour for many, many years, 25 years on the world tour. And then, of course, beating the best in the world in different areas of the world and geography. And it gave me an opportunity I always say tennis is my greatest education because it taught me so many things about the world and people and community and languages and religions and just getting people together and so on. But more than anything else, I think the sport itself taught me mostly about myself and what exactly I could excel in.
You had any hardship coming from India in the tennis world? Any issues of discrimination?
Oh, it's always. Every part of the world, you're welcomed because you're an athlete, but at the end of the day, you have to perform. And I think to a great extent, we were in the 70s and 80s. We stayed with families here in the United States when we came earlier on. Certainly, there were issues here and there that came about, and you had to literally put them aside to be able to excel in what you did. And but at the end of the day, I think we learned more than it truly affected us. And as much as it was a very difficult terrain because we are going into a path that had never been tread before.
That's true.
Nobody had ever gone the distance here.
That's true.
London was too far away to go to at that time. Today you know exactly what's going on everywhere.
That's right.
In those days, as I always say, credit to my parents because they were flying blind. You don't know where you're going to go.
That's right.
Today you know everything before you go. You know what you can make. You know what kind of profession it can be for you. So I think that made a huge difference to what happens today. But we hope I led it in a manner of speaking that gave everyone else the opportunity to think positive and say, I can do that too.
And when was the first time you landed in United States? How was that? Only because of excellence in tennis that made you?
Yes, I went to England for the first time in '69, and
69.
2019 was my 50th consecutive Wimbledon, 50 years in a row.
Wow, that is
So
excellent.
that was quite a bit. And this year, this July, will mark the 50th year since we arrived in the United States.
So this is the right time. We are going to
Became
begin the
32.
50 years of tennis.
So we were I was very fortunate to be here at a time where it got me better. I didn't perform well in year one. It really, everything came together in year two when I was in the United States. And I was 17, 18, 19 years old. So you're still in your late teens and you're learning. You're incredibly impressed by what you see
That's right.
at the time. And still you had to compete with the best.
That's true.
And so being number one in India, number one in Asia wasn't good enough. You had to be the best in the world.
That's right. So I mean, people are always persistent, but people are not consistent. If you're persistent, you get it. If you're consistent, you can keep it. What do you think about that?
It's absolutely true. It's very difficult to hold that discipline throughout your career. And in spite of injuries, in spite of illnesses, in spite of setbacks, you really have to be able to overcome them as they come along. And it's individual. It's not like a team sport of 11 players where two guys are not doing too well, but the team can still play. So here you're put into a situation where you really honestly have to overcome those. If you have an ankle injury, you're taking 3 months off. If you have an elbow injury, you've got 3 months off. You got injections, you got surgeries, you got, and then trying to get back into
The game.
the run of it is very, very difficult. So you need that kind of persistence, the discipline, the dedication, and all of it that goes into excelling. And then when you perform, you still have to win. You can have good matches, but you can still lose.
That is very true. And the elbow injury made you the career change, right? Your tennis was kind of elbow injury.
No, my elbow injury came through in '77. I ended up eventually had surgery, and then I came out of it.
Okay.
And then I led in the final, of course, at Davis Cup in '87. But the more important thing was the longevity of my career. I was able to play the tour and play Davis Cup for 20 years. That is very hard to do.
That's true.
for long periods of time, in spite of injuries
Okay.
and setbacks. So once my career was over, I actually played 2 or 3, 4 more years than maybe I should have and could have.
That's true.
But I was receiving anywhere between 500 and 1,000 letters a week just telling me to continue playing. And so because of this incredible support from the Indian diaspora worldwide, the Indians in India, and incredible support from the sports community, I was able to actually stay on, and they inspired me to continue to play well.
I mean, during that time, you were not living in a digital world, right? All the communications, even,
Exactly.
there's a personal touch.
Yeah.
And I know all the legends, John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors, Bob, you had the personal connection. I think in the sport itself, there is a family atmosphere. You are playing as a team, you are playing as a family, but it doesn't matter where you came from originally. That scenario is completely changed, I believe. Everybody wanted to win by themselves. There is no teamwork, and teamwork is dream work. What do you think about that change in the sports arena in general? Like they are becoming very self-centered. Do you think so? Or no?
Well, I think that this has always been an individual sport. You can't get away from that fact.
Okay.
You win for yourself, and that's it, unless you play Davis Cup.
That's right.
Which was very much a team effort.
That is a team effort.
Yes. But I think today what has happened is a lot more entourages with these players. So they're not actually having dinner with the others or going to a movie or any of that with the other players as well. So today it's much more within their own little group of people who they hang out with, irrespective of whether it's in Stockholm or Sydney or Tokyo or Tashkent or wherever. So here in our case, we would beat each other's brains out on the court, but then we'd go to a movie in the evening together. That was always there. So we had mutual respect for one another just from the quality of your tennis.
Give respect, take respect. That was the policy. Could you please share the most memorable moment? I know you had a lot of moments to cherish. The one and the best moment in tennis, in your, if anything.
Well, I was very fortunate to have had several of them. But often when you win the very first early event at 13 years old, when I won a college tournament at 13, when I beat a 19-year-old medical student in the final in 5 sets at 13 and a half years old, which is a near impossibility when you didn't think you could do it and everyone didn't think you could do it, and you eventually did it.
Yeah.
That was a big breakthrough for me. And then, by the time 4 years later, I ended up winning the national championships in Calcutta, and that was again unheard of, unexpected. Ended up doing that, and then a couple of years later, ended up making the world's top 10. Again, unheard of. So those were 3 moments in history for my career that took me to a different plane, where no one had gone before in the open era. So it put India firmly on the world map of tennis.
Map of tennis.
And then the expectations were continuously high at the time of my having to win tournaments as opposed to just being in there.
That's right.
And so that's where I think we're struggling a little bit today, where we're not actually in the major tournaments to actually have a chance to perform and win them. So I think those moments were great. And then of course, the 2 Davis Cup finals, you can't take that away at all.
Yeah,
I mean, those were very special. And it's only 2 times India has been in the Davis Cup final in the Open era.
One that you couldn't play, one.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Because of the Israel is Israel or?
No, that was South Africa in 74.
Okay.
In 74 for apartheid. And then in 87, we faced the Israel issue, but I overcame it in a meeting with our Prime Minister, and we were able to take it forward and eventually reach the final again in 87.
Any heartbreaking moment in tennis?
Oh, tons of them. Tons of them. The reason the wins are so, you get so ecstatic with the wins is because you have losses.
That's right.
The losses are disappointing to a point where you don't sleep for 3-4 months.
Yes.
But the wins make that all the better when you eventually
So you just come back.
Overcome it.
Overcome.
Yes. So anytime you have a setback, it should really, honestly, inspire to work harder so that won't happen again.
That's right.
That's why I can see when Tiger Woods comes back to play the Masters, or Federer comes back after surgery, and so on and so forth. It gives me, it just gives me that feeling of knowing what that is, because it's hard to replicate that in any other walk of life.
That's right.
Except in an individual sport.
Who is your best tennis player, other than yourself?
There's tons of guys better than me, but I think for me, you look at generations of players that I was fortunate to play with, over 4 or 5 generations of guys from Laver and Rosewall and Smith and Ash, and then through Connors and McEnroe and Borg, and then Lendl and Becker and Edberg, and you can come across 4 or 5 generations of these guys that I'm very fortunate to have played with and against all of them. And then to see the 3 guys today, Djokovic, Nadal and Federer, and to see how well they performed in the same time.
That's right.
We've never had 3 great champions of this nature in the same time. So I think I've covered them through through television presenting that I've been doing. And so I've been able to actually enjoy the fact that these 3 guys are so great, but we were able to see them in the same era.
I still remember that being a commentator in Wimbledon.
Yes.
And your commentary was so amazing. Like you are visualizing the real game. And I still have goosebumps on thinking about that. And the worldwide accepted commentary. I think one of the best commentators in the Wimbledon. What happened to that? How did you?
I didn't. I still continued to do some of it, and I did it for about 27 years. Believe it or not, that was a long haul. Not just Wimbledon, the French Open, the U.S. Open, the Australian Open, Augusta, the Golf Masters, the British Open Golf. I did a whole slew of stuff across the board. I hosted the London Olympics. For television, I did, so television, I had my own show on television for CNN Southeast Asia, a talk show. I had interviewed some of the great names in sport, in entertainment, in politics, and it was just across the board. So from a television perspective, it gave me a chance to actually share my thoughts and views with the audience, and the remarks were wonderful, the comments were terrific, and I always tried to entertain and educate at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you entertain, you educate, and you make people think about it. Okay, what is the game all about?
Yeah.
And you may have a lot of mantras of success in your life. Anything 2 or 3 that you would like to share? This may be the focus point. All other things will be the pathways of success. Maybe.
Well, I've been fortunate to have had a wide variety of interests and things that I've given the opportunity to do and be a part of. And anything I've done, I've tried to do the best I could with it. But I think my greatest, honestly, the greatest feeling I get is the fact that today, as I go about my life and do a variety of things in different walks of life, the greatest thing for me today is the fact that both my sons speak to me every day.
That is the beauty of thing. And I think Prakash is your son's name.
Prakash and Vikram, yes.
And Prakash, any connection you gave because of Prakash Padukone? Any?
No,
because you started badminton.
Yeah. Earlier on, I did. I enjoyed that too. And Prakash Padukone is a good friend of mine. But I think the important aspect of the boys are to do what they want to do, and for me to be able to help them achieve whatever they want to achieve.
Okay.
But Prakash also #1 in India, and in tennis. He played on the tour for 11 years. We're the only father-son to be #1 in a country, in our part of the world. And so that was quite special for me. And now he's also the face of the tennis channel in the United States. So he's doing television for the last 5-6 years. He's on his way to Monte Carlo, to the Monte Carlo tournament at this point.
Wow.
And so he's an actor, he's a producer, he's doing exactly what he would like to do. My second son, Vikram, he's a high-profile lawyer in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
So it's nice to see both the boys do what they want to do.
That is what you as a dad, that is what
exactly
you wanted to be, you know. And it's an amazing journey of excellence. It's incomparable journey of excellence.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy to know that after all these many things that he achieved and 50 years of tennis, and he can tell anything about tennis and how many talk shows he did and how many advice he did, how many things he contributed to the sports arena in general, and starting from the badminton to tennis and his acting production career in Hollywood. How was your experience with Roger Moore as a James Bond movie?
Yeah, again, that was another experience that was very different from what I was used to on the tennis court. And here you have the ability to portray someone and create a value by way of entertainment in probably the single greatest series of all time.
That's right.
Which was the James Bond series. And then, of course, I went on to do a Star Trek film as well after that. And then I had my own television series on NBC and network television in the US. And all of those things, again, were another form of education, entertainment for me to understand what this was all about. And then so from my transition, if you want to call it, from sport to entertainment, and then went on to serve the United Nations for nearly 7 years as a messenger of peace for Secretary General Kofi Annan into parts of the world that I had never been to, was again another form of education that gave me a complete picture of the world and what the community is like. And so, you go from one to the other, but the important thing is to work at it and to have that kind of discipline where you can consistently and constantly educate yourself to be the best that you can in what you do.
And how many movies you produce? And you are acting as a tennis player to an actor, producer, and an established Hollywood name, from tennis name to Hollywood name. It's kind of a complete different transformation.
It is. But again, it's the discipline that comes into both, even in acting or in production or creating a business and so on and so forth. It's that discipline that you carry with you. And that's what tennis has taught me. Whatever I've done since then and during that time has always been based on that kind of discipline that that your work ethic isn't going to change irrespective of what you do. So I think that's where I was very fortunate to have tennis as my background that led me to other things, because I certainly knew that tennis wasn't going to last me forever. You had to cut it off at some point. So I think that continues to help me even today in what I do, irrespective of my age. So,
Irrespective of the age, he said, self-discipline, doing the best of the best. Doesn't matter, whatever you do, whether you are a janitor, you are a server, you are an administrator, you are a politician, you are an actor, you are a sports personality, doesn't matter. Do the best you can. You need to have a sense of urgency in the morning, and before you go to bed, you need to have a sense of accomplishment. Here, this is the messenger of peace.
thank you.
50 years of tennis and personification of determination. You know, at this age, I am so lucky to be with Vijay. Vijay means win, winning, and trying is better than winning. And he started as badminton player and became a tennis player and became a Hollywood legend. This is the true legend. You need to learn a lot of things from him, and the positive things in life you get from the positive people. Success breeds success. Let's talk about people. Let us talk about people, those who do good things in life. Let us do the best you can. You live with a purpose. Life is too short. Movies are too long. Happiness Magic is coming back. Thank you, sir.